poll, but good evening. This is the March 18th, 2015 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Smithtown. We're going to begin it with the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're all invited to join in. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The first item on the agenda this evening, the Planning Department is recommending the following items for adjournment as we have insufficient information to act upon them. Under Part 1, Item 1, 2012-04 Storybook Homes. Item 2, 2012-02 Carlson Associates. Item 3, 2009-05 FB4 Realty. Item 4, 1156 Map of Open Meadow. Item 5, 773 Scholar Estates. Item 6, 1135 Tahami Plat. Item 7, 288 Olivia Estates. Item 8, 1039 Garden Gate. Item 9, 2010-06 KBC Holdings. Item 10, 911A Glen Hill Northern. Mr. Chairman, these are the items the Planning Department is recommending for adjournment this evening.
Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard on any of the items that were just read regarding which the Planning Department is recommending an adjournment? Seeing none, a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn items 1 through 10 on the March 18th agenda of the Planning Board as recommended by the Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda under new hearings, item 11, number 1165 Capizoli Plat in Esconset. The applicant is requesting to final approval to subdivide a .96 41,681 square foot parcel into 2 single-family lots. One lot will be used for a single-family home, and one lot is improved with an existing single-family home. The final map of Capizoli Plat consists of 1 tax lot, which is .96 acres and rectangular in shape. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel into 2 single-family lots. The property is a 358-foot-long through lot with 116 feet of frontage on Southern Boulevard and 116 feet of frontage on Locust Drive. The property has 1 existing single-family home facing Southern Boulevard, and a new home facing Locust Drive is proposed. The site is zoned R15, residential, 15,000 square foot minimum, and is surrounded by property zone R15. The property is almost level with elevations ranging from 99 feet to 102 feet above sea level. The depth of the groundwater is more than 10 feet, and no problems are anticipated with respect to groundwater. The site does not contain any wetland or natural surface water features. Both lots will exceed the minimum lot area for the R15 district. Lot 1 will have a total area of 20,000 square feet, and Lot 2 will have a total area of 21,681 square feet. Both lots will conform to the minimum dimensional regulation for an R15 zone in terms of area, width, and frontage. However, the existing home on Lot number 2 has a substandard side yard setback on the north side. In 1976, the Board of Zoning Appeals had granted a side yard setback variance from 16 feet to 11 feet for the construction of an attached garage. However, this variance was granted for the entire .96 acre lot and will be invalidated by the subdivision. Therefore, the applicant is requesting that the Planning Board grant the side yard setback variance simultaneously with final plat approval in order to maintain the non-conforming attached garage as it exists. According to Section 322-30.4 of the zoning ordinance, the Planning Board has the authority to grant area variances simultaneously with final plat approval, provided that all of the following conditions are met. 1. The change does not alter the density required by the zoning district. 2. The change complies with Section 322.19 environmentally sensitive lands. 3. The change would result in the addition of not more than 1 lot to the proposed subdivision, provided it does not alter the density of the zoning district. And 4. When in the board's judgment, the change meets 1 or more of the following objectives. A. There is a public purpose or benefit in changing the requirement pattern. B. The alteration, such as a frontage reduction, is consistent with the surrounding lots. C. The change would preserve historically significant structures or features of the town. D. The change would preserve, protect, or promote scenic or environmentally sensitive lands. E. The alteration would better protect the homeowner from undesirable land uses. F. The change would reduce the amount of regrading or clearing of the property. And G. The change would be incidental or minor and not alter the character of the neighborhood. Further, Section 322-30.4 of the zoning ordinance states that the planning board shall grant the minimum variance that it shall deem necessary and adequate, and at the same time preserves and protects the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. In making such a determination, the planning board shall consider and render a determination in accordance with the following standards and criteria. 1. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting of the area variance. 2. Whether the benefit sought by an applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than by an area variance. 3. Whether the proposed variance is substantial. 4. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5. Whether the alleged difficulty necessitating the area variance was self-created by an applicant, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the planning board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. The planning department has reviewed the variance request and finds that the requested variance appears to meet all 4 of the conditions above, in that it will not increase the density or add an additional lot, will comply with Section 322.19 environmentally sensitive lands, and seems appropriate because it meets Objective G in that the change seems incidental and minor. The variance will have very little impact on the surrounding neighborhood, and the subdivision will have no change on the side yard as it presently exists. Because the setback variance is minor and the structure has already existed for almost 40 years, the planning department feels that the change would not alter the character of the neighborhood. With respect to the 5 variance consideration, it appears that the granting of the variance will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. The benefit cannot be achieved by another feasible method because the attached garage cannot be feasibly sited in a location that doesn't require a variance. The reduction from the 16-foot minimum side yard to setback to 11 feet is not considered substantial and is the minimum variance necessary to maintain the existing structure in its current form. It appears that the proposed variance will not have an adverse effect on the physical environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, as the garage has already been built in accordance with the earlier variance granted by the BZA. Finally, while the alleged difficulty necessitating the area variance may be considered self-created by the owner who has constructed the garage appears to have been built with the proper permits prior to a plan for the subdivision of the property. Therefore, it appears that the benefit to the owner is not outweighed by the impact on the neighborhood, as that impact is likely to be minor. For the reasons above, the planning department recommends approval of the proposed side yard setback modification along with final plat approval. This modification should be noted on the filed map. Pursuant to Section 248-32, a fee of $175 is required for this variance. The planning department has reviewed this application and found that the subdivision layout is consistent with the surrounding area, including the properties to the north and south, which were formerly through lots subdivided in the same way. With respect to the required sidewalks, Locust Drive is a dead-end residential access street. It is unlikely that sidewalks will be required here. Therefore, the planning department recommends that the board waive the requirement for 116 linear feet of sidewalks on Locust Drive. However, Southern Boulevard is a secondary arterial street road that runs from Town Line Road in Esconset to Middle Country Road in St. James. Southern Boulevard is in proximity to many pedestrian destinations, such as shopping, parks, and schools. Although Southern Boulevard has no sidewalks between Town Line Road and Smithtown Boulevard, the town has constructed sidewalks along Southern Boulevard between Smithtown Boulevard and Middle Country Road. Southern Boulevard has been identified as a location where additional sidewalks are needed, and it is anticipated that sidewalks will be constructed in much of the remaining area between Town Line Road and Smithtown Boulevard when a large vacant property is subdivided in the near future. For these reasons, the planning department does not recommend waiving the 116 linear feet of sidewalks along Southern Boulevard. However, the planning department recommends that the board accept payment to the sidewalk fund in lieu of installing the required sidewalks, and this is consistent with the adjacent subdivisions. Section 248-24 of the Subdivision Requirements Land Use Standard states that natural areas, parks, and playgrounds are vital to a well-balanced community, and each subdivision will be required to show a park area. However, in cases where the planning board determines that a suitable park cannot be located or is otherwise not practical, the subdivider is required to pay a cash equivalent prior to filing the map. Given the location and small size of the subdivision, a dedication for park space would not be practical. Therefore, the payment of an equivalent park fee established at $7,600 is recommended as a condition of final plat approval. The proposal appears to comply with the standards of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code with respect to sewage flow and septic system setbacks. The engineering, highway, and traffic safety departments have no objection to the subdivision. Letters assuring availability and utility service have been received from the Smithtown Water Authority and PSE&G Long Island. The Smithtown Central School District has acknowledged the subdivision. The amount of the inspection fee is estimated at $1,030. The amount of the park fee is estimated at $7,600. The amount of the performance bond is estimated at $12,888. The amount of the cash deposit is estimated at $1,000, and the amount of the performance bond to be posted is $11,880. The following resolution is recommended for Capizoli Plat number 1165 from the Department of Environment and Waterways pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Be it resolved that the Planning Board of the Town of Smithtown hereby declares itself lead agency on this matter and finds that this matter is subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA. And be it resolved that the Planning Board of the Town of Smithtown, after due study and deliberation of the subject record, does hereby issue a SECRA negative declaration, determination of non-significance, and EIS is not necessary in the matter of the application for subdivision approval by Phil Capizoli for Capizoli Plat number 1165 for the following reasons. A, the proposal does not appear to significantly threaten any unique or of highly valuable environmental or cultural resources as identified in or regulated by the Environmental Conservation Law of the State of New York or the Town of Smithtown Town Code. B, the parcel does not appear to suffer from any severe environmental development constraints, no poor soil properties, no high groundwater, and no unmanageable slopes. C, the small size and nature of the subdivision mitigate against a significant adverse impact upon the environment. D, the proposal appears to be consistent with the planned use of this parcel and compatible with the neighboring land uses. And E, the project as proposed on the Tree Preservation and Land Clearing Plan prepared by Bruce N. Murrell, licensed land surveyor and dated December 23, 2014, provides for the retention of a significant amount of existing trees and natural vegetation upon development of the subject parcel. The Planning Department recommends approval of this final map and offers the following resolutions for the Board's consideration. Be it resolved that the final map of Capizoli Plat number 1165 is hereby approved subject to the following conditions. A, posting of the performance bond in form and amount specified by a separate resolution of the Planning Board and for a term of 2 years. B, posting of a general liability insurance policy to run concurrently with the term of the performance bond in accordance with the other provisions of Section 248 of the Code of the Town of Smithtown subdivision regulations. C, payment of the inspection fee and cash deposit as established by a separate resolution of the Planning Board. D, payment of a park fee of $7,600. E, final approval of the drainage and regrading plans to the satisfaction of the town engineer. F, prior to the time of subdivision for an application for a building permit for a particular lot, the subdivider shall have his engineer or surveyor submit an individual site plan of that lot, which is in substantial agreement with the intent of the approved regrading plan. Such individual site plan shall show a certified existing topography and all relevant grades proposed for the street, the house, and all lands to be regraded on that lot. This site plan shall also show storm pools, dry wells, retaining wells, etc., as bonded or deemed necessary. Such site plans must be approved by the engineering department and returned to the building inspector prior to the issuance of a building permit for the foundation and garage slab only. G, at such time as the subdivider has completed the foundation and rough grading for a particular lot, he shall have his engineer or surveyor make an as-built survey of the foundation grade, garage slab grade, and grades immediately around the foundation. Such as-built foundation plan must be approved by the engineering department, and no framing shall commence before this approval. H, a valid certificate of occupancy shall be provided for the existing residence and accessory structures on the property. I, the final plat shall include all information required by Section 248.15 and 248.16 of the Town of Smithtown subdivision regulations, the conditions of approval, and the office of the Suffolk County Clerk. A check print for the final plat shall be submitted to the Planning Department for review before the milers are prepared. J, a total of 6 street trees shall be planted approximately 35 feet on center. These trees shall be 3-inch to 3.5-inch in caliper, northern red oak, American sweet gum, tulip tree, white oak, or approved equals. Existing healthy trees may be substituted if they are protected from construction damage and are acceptable to the Planning Department. K, 116 linear feet of sidewalks are waived on Locust Drive. 116 linear feet of sidewalks are required on Southern Boulevard. In lieu of installing sidewalks, the applicant may contribute the bonded amount to the sidewalk fund. L, all necessary dedication papers shall be submitted by the developer to the Planning Department in complete and accurate form as one package, including but not limited to the performance bond, liability insurance policy, title report, and all required fees at least 90 days prior to the expiration date of the conditional final approval. If the applicant is unable to comply with the above requirement prior to the 90-day deadline, an extension of the planning board's approval is necessary. M. The filed map shall note the side yard setback reduction from 16 feet to 11 feet on the northern side of lot number 2 for the attached garage to the extent that it exists, as depicted on the survey by Sheff and Merle, PC, dated October 11, 2012. N. A fee of $175 is required for each lot that receives a variance from the requirements of zoning. And O. The map shall be updated so as to identify the subject property in the key map. And be it further resolved that the chairman of the planning board is hereby authorized to sign the final plat, thereby approving said plat after the town board has posted a performance bond of satisfactory form and amount. And be it further resolved that the conditional approval of said plat shall expire 180 days after the date of this resolution, and within 90 days after the chairman of the planning board signs the final maps of this plat, unless said plat shall have been duly filed or recorded by the owner in the office of the Suffolk County Clerk. And be it further resolved that the planning board of the town of Smithtown hereby modifies the building zone ordinance of the code of the town of Smithtown for the subdivision known as Capizoli plat as follows. Reduction for the side yard setback on lot number 2 from 16 to 11 feet. And this table of modification shall be shown on the final map to be filed in the office of the Suffolk County Clerk. And we'll do the performance
You're going
bond
to read the
separately.
performance bond? No, you please read it now.
Sure.
Then we can do all the motions
Yeah.
at the same time, if we get to that.
And for the performance bond, be it resolved that the chairman of the planning board be authorized to sign the performance bond estimate for the map of Capizoli Plat 1165 in the amount of $12,880 and establishing an inspection fee of $1,030 and a cash deposit of $1,000. Therefore, the amount of the performance bond to be posted with the town shall be $11,880.
Good evening, sir. Are you here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, I am.
Please state your name and address and relationship to the applicant for the record.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Kevin Guilfoyle, Island-Wide Permit Services. My address is at 86 Center Street, Lake Ronkonkoma. I'm here with the applicant, Philip Capizoli.
Have the necessary affidavits of posting been filed?
Yes, sir.
They have been, or they're going to be?
Yes, they have been. I have them here.
Please
I'll take
hand them over to Alex. Thank you.
Do you have a card, sir?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've read the memo that Alex had just read into the record, and we're in total agreement.
Regarding the analysis and the proposed resolutions and the conditions that are attached.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to be heard on this particular application? Seeing none. Any questions from any members of the board on this application? Seeing none, then we're going to need first a motion regarding the secret declaration.
In the matter of Capizoli Plat number 1165, motion to approve the secret negative declaration in accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. Then can we please have a motion regarding the approval of the final map?
In the matter of the final map of Capizoli Plat number 1165, I move that we adopt the resolution as read in accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion also carries unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. Can we also have a motion regarding the modification of the dimensional requirements?
In the matter of Capizoli Plat number 1165, motion to approve the variance as listed in the table of modifications in accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. And last but not least, may we have a motion, please, on the performance bonds?
In the matter of map of Capizoli plat number 1165, I move that we approve the performance bond estimate as recommended by the Planning Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously. That resolution is adopted. And that's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, in front of you, you also have the performance bond, which you can sign following the meeting.
Yes, we'll address that after the meeting.
The next item we'll discuss on the agenda is item number 12, 1101 Flynn Platt in Kings Park. The request is to waive the requirement for the installation of sidewalks within the subdivision known as Flynn Platt number 1101. The map of Flynn Platt was granted conditional final approval by the Planning Board on May 7, 2008. The request is to waive all 240 linear feet of sidewalks on Heather Drive. The Engineering and Highway Departments have no objection to the waiver request, and the Traffic Safety Department has no comment. The applicant has indicated that there are no sidewalks on Heather Drive. The Planning Department has reviewed this request and determined that there are no sidewalks on Heather Drive or the adjacent streets. Heather Drive has not been identified as an area where sidewalks are needed. This segment of Heather Drive is a dead-end residential access street that is not in close proximity to pedestrian destinations, so it is unlikely that sidewalks will be needed at this location in the foreseeable future. Therefore, the Planning Department has no objection to this request. The Planning Department offers the following resolution for the Board's consideration. Be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby approves the request of Lawrence Flynn to waive the 240 linear feet of sidewalks on Heather Drive within the subdivision known as Flynn Platt number 1101.
Anybody present on behalf of the applicant on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. The applicant is here tonight. He's heard the proposed resolution of the Planning Department. We're in full agreement.
Have the necessary affidavits of posting been filed?
I have it here.
Please hand it to Alex. Thanks. Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard on this particular matter? Ma'am, please come up to the microphone. Give your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Laura Sitkowski. I reside at 34 Heather Drive in Kings Park. It's Sitkowski.
Okay.
Okay. With the sidewalk waiver, if it's granted, I just want the board to understand that two residents, myself and my next-door neighbor, we are requesting the removal of the sidewalk that's in front of our two properties. Originally, our two homes were named the Oakwoods Estates. They were built in 1992. Our builder, John Hurtado Jr., did not pay for the sidewalk waiver. So my neighbor and I appeared before the zoning board in 1992 to voice our dismay at the installation of the 100-foot sidewalk. Basically, it's a sidewalk to nowhere. Originally, when we moved into our houses, our property had sod to the Belgian block. At our expense, we had to remove the sod and adjust the in-ground sprinkler system. We will have to do this again at our expense, but we do so gladly if the sidewalk is removed. The sidewalk is a visual detriment to the appearance of our properties. It does not meet the ADA requirements. It is 3 feet wide, not 4 feet wide, and it does not have handicap ramps. It is an eyesore. After numerous conversations with Glenn Jorgensen, he assured us that he would remove it whenever the waiver of the rest of the cul-de-sac was approved. Yesterday, I spoke to Mr. Jorgensen, and he told me that the sidewalk responsibility has now been given to the head of engineering, Mark Riley. I spoke to Mark Riley today, and he told me that it would first have to go out to bid to get a contractor. So the earliest this could be done would be this summer. If the sidewalk waiver is granted for the rest of that cul-de-sac, Larry Flynn would need to give that waiver to Mark Riley. I am following up with a conversation with Mark Riley in May to see the progress on this. And I'm hoping the board understands that the whole cul-de-sac needs to be sidewalkless, if you can look at it that way. Okay, so we just want that assurance.
Well, a couple of things. First, can you just let us know where your residence is in relation to the residence regarding, or the area where they're seeking the sidewalk waiver?
We're next door to 36 Heather Drive.
Okay.
32 and 34 are on the north side. Oh, no, northwest side.
And how long have you lived in your residence?
Since 1992. It was built. It was a new
And was
construction.
the sidewalk put in 1992?
Yes, it was. It was not there until the second month we moved in.
And was the issue of waiving the sidewalk addressed at that time?
The builder did not pay the waiver fee. My neighbor, Mr. Rossi, Lou Rossi, and I came before the board to say that we did not want the sidewalk. There are no other sidewalks on Heather Drive or on the neighboring street of Willow Lane.
Well, the fact that there are no other sidewalks on Heather Drive or on the neighboring street would be one of the reasons why it would be appropriate to waive sidewalks on the remaining part of Heather Drive.
Right.
However, we're not an enforcement board. We have before us an application to waive sidewalks along 240 feet of the area. And we can either grant that or deny that.
Right.
If there are other issues outstanding concerning the removal of the sidewalks, and you've spoken to other people in other town departments who have indicated to you that they're going to undertake that,
Right.
that's really between you and them. Right now, we're being asked whether or not we should agree to let them waive sidewalks on the 240 feet that's sidewalkless now,
I see.
so that it can remain sidewalkless. So I'm sure you don't want more sidewalks there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you're in agreement with the applicant's request to waive
Right.
sidewalks.
I am.
So then,
But he has to forward that waiver to Mark Riley.
well, this will be a matter of public record if, in fact, this application is granted.
Right.
And I would presume that there would be some way that Mr. Riley could obtain a record of the waiver.
We would forward the decision of the board to the engineering department.
Okay?
Okay,
So
very
when
good.
when the board acts tonight,
Okay.
that decision will be forwarded to the engineering department, then they can act on it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Before you step down, just one question. The department memo says there's no sidewalks on Heather Drive. Is that then an error?
That was
or-
incorrect. When I heard that, it's incorrect. There are, it's 100 feet of sidewalk. You can come to my house and see it.
Right, I believe it is in front of just those few properties, and the rest of Heather Drive does not have sidewalks.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else present who wishes to be heard on this application?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I just say one thing? Just for the record, the applicant's my cousin, and I did not participate in the analysis or recommendation that the department forwarded to the board.
Okay, so noted. Yes, Mr. Tramarko.
Dave Flynn's cousin, Larry Flynn, is here, and he tells me he's agreed to remove that portion of the sidewalk that the lady is concerned about. So it's going to come out.
That's fine. If he wants to do it, he has made all the necessary arrangements with whoever he has to make those arrangements with to do it. That's between him and the people who live there and the people who he needs to make those arrangements with. So at this point, with respect to the application to waive 240 feet of linear sidewalks on Heather Drive regarding Flynn Plat number 1101, can we have a motion, please?
In the matter of Flynn Plat number 1101, motion to adopt the resolution as read in accordance with the recommendation of the planning department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. That motion carries unanimously, and that resolution is adopted.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda, item 13, is a performance bond extension for 1120 Richard Holmes in St. James. The request is to retroactively extend the performance bond for Richard Holmes, 1120, for a period of 2 years to expire on January 20. Let me just check that date. On January 22nd, 2017. There must be a typo there. And additionally, to further extend the performance bond for a period. Oh, I'm sorry. That is right. 2015. and to further extend the performance bond for a period of 2 years to expire on January 22nd, 2017. In order to obtain more time to complete
So there's
construction.
two extensions, basically.
That's right.
One retroactively and one
To
going
2017,
forward.
correct, that's right. The applicant received conditional final approval for this two-lot subdivision from the Planning Board on November 5th, 2008. A performance bond estimate in the amount of $22,925 was approved by the board and subsequently signed by the chairman. The applicant submitted bond monies and related materials to the town, and the town board accepted a passbook in lieu of the performance bond on January 22nd, 2009. Planning board approval for this performance bond expired on January 22nd, 2013. The applicant submitted a performance bond extension application on December 31st, 2014 to the Planning Department, and the application was distributed to all departments concerned for review. The Engineering and Highway Departments have no objection to the performance bond extension request and have determined that the bond amount is sufficient to cover all remaining improvements. The Traffic Safety Department has not commented. The applicant did not indicate a reason why the request was being made. However, it appears that the work on the subdivision has not yet begun. Therefore, the Planning Department has no objection to this request. The Planning Department offers the following resolutions for the board's consideration. Be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby grants a retroactive extension of the performance bond for the subdivision known as Richard Homes, number 1120, for a period of 2 years to expire on January 22nd, 2015. And be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby approves an extension of the performance bond for the subdivision known as Richard Homes, 1120, for a period of 2 years to expire on January 22nd, 2017.
Good evening, sir. Are you here on behalf of the applicant?
I am the applicant, sir.
Can you just give your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Edward J. Richards, 5 Talmadge Road, Fort Salonga, New York.
And have the necessary affidavits of posting been submitted?
I was sent a letter that said I did not need to post.
Can you hand that over to Alex, please?
Sure.
Was this property posted at its original hearing, and it was adjourned to tonight's hearing? Mm. Mm. Right. Okay, let me ask. In this case, I think it was our understanding that because it had been adjourned, that it had been posted for an original hearing. It looks like it has been posted. So we recommend that we adjourn it pending the reposting.
Well, let me just check. Mr. Chairman, we're not sure what to do. We sent a letter saying that it didn't have to be posted, and I believe we had the impression that the property had been previously posted, but it really wasn't.
So it's never been posted?
Originally, with the original application in 2008.
Can you go back to the microphone, sir? You can actually take the microphone out if you want to, but or you can speak from over there, whatever you prefer.
I think it's probably a matter of semantics for me when I read the letters. I had originally posted in 2008, and then I put in the application. I had received an original letter that said that I would need to post, and I was prepared to do that. I was going to be out of the country, so I faxed a letter in on January 26th, well in advance of the last hearing, asking for a postponement. I received a letter on dated February 5th, that said that it did not need to be reposted. And so in reading that, I just assumed it didn't need to be reposted.
Well, when was the last time it was posted?
Oh, back in 2008.
And when it was posted in 2008, was that for a hearing that was going to be held back in 2008 or around that time?
That was for the subdivision, which included the performance bond, and it included...
I think that the sidewalk application would be a different matter, and if it was posted back in 2008 for the subdivision,
Yes, it
you
was.
may have been given a letter that said you don't have to post for this application, but if this application has never been posted yet, I think it has to be posted. Even so, I'm sorry that you received that letter, but I believe that letter was erroneous. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have to adjourn this to allow them to post it and come back and address it at that time. We hate to have you do that, sir, but the law requires that it be posted.
I understand.
And I think the posting that happened in 2008 was for a different application.
Right,
Doesn't apply to this application, which has to be posted itself.
okay.
No, this one has to be posted separately. And
Okay.
since it apparently has not been,
No, it hasn't.
it has to be posted. So do you want to pick out a date now so that he could post for that date, so he knows?
Could we put this on the next meeting? Or does it have to be re-advertised?
And let's give him enough time to do what he has to do.
Okay, so in April 1st, next meeting. So April 1st would be the next meeting of the board.
And when would he have to post it? When would he, can you let him know when he has to post
It'd
it
be
by?
5 days before.
I couldn't hear the date, April 1st, you
April
said?
That's
1st.
right. Mhm.
So then you have to have it posted by March 26th, am I correct? At least 5 days before, correct?
Right.
I'm going to be out of state, but my wife will be here. We'll have it posted, and then...
If
she
you
can
want to
come.
have it a later date, that's okay, but if you want to post it for the April, is it the April 1st hearing?
Yes.
The April 1st hearing, as long as someone can be here on April 1st to make the application and show that it's been posted properly,
Okay.
and we can hear it. If someone can't be here, that has authority to speak on behalf of you, the applicant, then I might suggest that we adjourn it to the April 15th meeting, if you can be here then. It's
Right.
really up to you.
I
if
can
you
be
can
here.
get it
I
done-
think April 15th would work a little better.
Okay, so let's adjourn this to April 15th. That would mean he has to post it by no later than April 9th. And if he does that, and we come back on April 15th and all's in order, he gives the affidavit of posting, we can address it at that point.
I'll take care of that for you.
Is that fine?
Yep,
Is it
that's
okay
fine.
with you?
Yep.
All right, so just hang out for a second. It's okay with the planning department?
Sure, and you
Okay.
can come down to the department at any point and pick up the signs.
Thank you.
All right, so with that being said, I move with respect to Richards Homes number 1120, that the matter be adjourned to the April 15th meeting of this board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Barbara did. Opposed? None? So adjourned. So the matter will be on April 15th. Please post it for April 15th, and we'll come back and take care of business on that day.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So would you like to take this back? Sorry about the confusion there. Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda is item 14, a modification to the tree preservation plan for 1154 Fieldstone Estates in Kings Park. The request is to modify the tree preservation plan submitted with the map of Fieldstone Estates 1154 so as to take down more trees than were depicted at the time of subdivision approval. The preliminary map of Fieldstone Estates was approved for a 10-lot subdivision on November 6, 2013. At that meeting, the Planning Department recommended approval of the preliminary map, but noted that the tree preservation and land clearing plan appeared to propose excessive clearing of many of the large trees that could reasonably be preserved. Site inspections had revealed that the rolling terrain and presence of many very large old trees contribute to the natural scenic character of this parcel and blend in with the surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, it was recommended that these trees should be preserved to the maximum extent possible in order to make this proposal compatible with the existing neighborhood. The Planning Department recommended that the Planning Board consider conditioning their approval on the preservation of additional trees wherever possible. The Planning Department recommended relocating some of the street drainage systems in order to preserve additional old-growth trees on both sides of the proposed cul-de-sac. The Planning Board approved the preliminary map of Fieldstone Estates with Condition D, which read, "A revised tree preservation and land clearing plan shall be submitted with the final application, preserving as many of the large old-growth trees as possible, as indicated in the Planning Department sketch dated November 6, 2013. Following that meeting, the applicant submitted a revised tree preservation and land clearing plan dated December 4, 2013. This proposal preserved 26 additional trees than indicated on the original tree preservation and land clearing plan dated August 28, 2013, including those that had been in the street drainage area. On December 19, 2013, the Planning Department found this proposal to be acceptable per Condition D of the Planning Board's November 9th preliminary approval, and this plan was forwarded to the Department of Environment and Waterways, who is responsible for the administration and enforcement of the tree preservation plan. With this condition satisfied, the map of Fieldstone Estates received final approval from the Planning Board on May 7, 2014. Following final approval, the applicant contacted the Planning Department and Department of Environment and Waterways and stated that he wanted to revise the tree preservation plan. On February 3rd, 2015, the applicant submitted a new tree preservation plan. The Department of Environment and Waterways has approved this plan and states that it requires Planning Board approval. This revised plan proposes taking down 22 additional trees that had been previously slated for preservation on a revision dated December 4, 2013. The Planning Department has requested comment from the Engineering Department about whether the drainage could be relocated to save two of the largest trees at the base of the proposed cul-de-sac. The Engineering Department is still reviewing this matter, but initially indicated that it did not seem likely that the trees could be saved. The Planning Board may choose to wait for further comments from the Engineering Department or act at this time. If the Board wishes to act on this application at this time, the Planning Department offers the following resolution for the Board's consideration. Be it resolved that in the manner of Fieldstone Estates 1154, the Planning Board hereby approves the revisions to the Tree Preservation and Land Clearing Plan prepared by J.R. Holtzmacher, P.E., LLC, dated January 30th, 2015, subject to the following condition. A, in order to compensate for the loss of additional large trees and help the development blend with the character of the neighborhood, the applicant shall be required to plant eastern white pines, minimum 8 foot tall, as street trees on Fieldstone Court. And attached to your memo, you have the revised tree preservation and land clearing plan, and the additional trees that are being taken down are highlighted for you in yellow.
Vincent J. Tremarco, 1038 West Jericho Turnpike, Smithtown, New York. We've heard the recommendation of the Planning Department and concur with same. A lot of work went into figuring out what trees had to be taken down because many of them were past their prime, so to speak. And we also concur with the planting of the additional trees along the core road.
Okay, with respect to these two large trees at the base of the cul-de-sac, does the Planning Department have any objection if in fact those trees cannot be saved with having the plan go forward?
No, if they,
No.
obviously not. If they can't be saved,
Okay,
we're in favor of removing them, yeah.
okay. Anybody in the audience who wishes to be heard on this matter? Any questions from any member of the board on this matter?
Does it say how many trees are going to be street side trees that are going to be planted and the spacing?
I'm sorry?
The additional trees? Does it state I can't touch. Does it state how many trees are going to be planted for the street side?
It's not indicated on this plan, but the typical is about 35 feet on center, and I can get the number from the subdivision approval.
Any other questions? Are you going to look that up?
Approximately 19 trees would be required on the cul-de-sac.
Okay? Okay, any other questions? None? Motion, please?
In the matter of Fieldstone Estates, number 1154, motion to adopt the resolution as read in accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? That motion carries unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Tremarco. Are you... Is that the affidavit of posting?
Yes.
Thank you. Let the record reflect it's been filed.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda under other matters is a presentation on the comprehensive plan, unless you wanted to do the adoption
Yeah, I
of
was
the
going to
minutes
say,
first.
I'd rather do the adoption of the minutes
Sure.
first. So can we have a motion on the adoption of the minutes of February 18th, 2015, and the adoption of the minutes of March 4th, 2015? One motion is all we need.
Motion to adopt the minutes from February 18, 2015, and March 4, 2015.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? So adopted.
And before we do that, there's one item of correspondence that's not on the agenda. I believe I handed that out in addition to your packet. It should say subdivision number 1156 on it. You may remember this was an application that the board adjourned to a meeting in May in order to give the applicant time to apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They've asked that it be rescheduled to the earliest possible date. Typically, how this would work is the applicant would apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals would review the case and ask for comments from the planning board, but I believe the applicant is asking for comments from the planning board sooner than they have applied to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Well, I don't see any problem with putting the matter on for the soonest available date as they request. What we're going to do at that time, we'll address at that time. If they want it on at that time, we'll accommodate that request, and then we'll address the merits of the issue on that day. And if it's premature at that time, then we'll have to advise them accordingly.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really on the agenda, but I don't have any objection to moving it up. Does anybody else have any objections to putting it on a sooner date? No. So that would be an administrative matter that you guys could handle.
Okay. And then if you just give me
We
a
have
minute.
no objection.
Sure. And if you just give me a minute to set this up, I'm going to pass
Sure.
it over to David Flynn for the third installment of the presentation.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Just
Good
for
evening.
for the record, my name's David Flynn. I'm the Assistant Director of Town Planning for the town of Smithtown. Tonight is the third of three presentations about the comprehensive plan update. In the first one, I explained about what a comprehensive plan is. In the second, I went over what background studies were done to try to come up with a plan. And tonight's presentation is regarding the draft that we submitted to the town board last month. Before getting into the merits of the plan, I think it would be useful to go over some of the ground rules about what how we came up with our recommendations. Some of these things might seem obvious, but I think it's important and they're fundamental. The lists that I'm giving you are not everything. My intention is to try to give you a very condensed version or summary of what the plan is, so many things are left out. However, the first thing is we want to state that it's really for the public good. It's not for the good of any individual or any group of individuals. It's to try to do the right thing for the whole town. A second principle is that communities or regions should be sustainable, that people in future generations should hopefully be able to enjoy the same benefits that we enjoy, whether you're talking about quality of life or the fiscal situation or any other situation. The third is an unusual term. I don't know who came up with it, and it isn't what it sounds like. It says environmental justice. Environmental justice is a principle that's been enunciated among attorneys and planners for about a decade that basically says that people who do not have access to power shouldn't be subjected to the worst planning. That, in other words, typically that poor people shouldn't be the people who get to live by the airport or the landfill or the bridge or whatever it is that other people don't have to live near. So one of the principles here is that we're not trying to, if you will, stick it to any people who don't have clout. And then the last point that I put up here is that in any good plan, the public really decides what happens, not some professional planners, even though we may have studied it or do it for a living. The public decides in the same way that if you were having an architect design a house and you want the kitchen behind the living room and he or she thinks it should be in the front of the room, the front of the house, it's your house. And it's the same thing with the public. A planner might think that alternative A is best, but the public is the one that decides.
Dave, when you talk about sustainability, what is it exactly that we're looking at sustaining? We're not talking population density, we're not talking traffic flow, because we know those things change substantially with
Right.
time. So what are we thinking?
It's a good question, and I say it's a really good question because this thing comes up at planning conferences around the country. Sustainability generally means that most often it's one way, and then there's a second way. Most often it means environmental sustainability, that water quality, air quality, flora and fauna, aesthetics, historic resources, access to food, and so on, in the future won't cost more or be more difficult to obtain than it is today. However, way back when I was in college, sustainability really meant efficiency, that a community could afford to pay the taxes for the benefits in the future that are being accumulated today. So we talk about environmental and fiscal sustainability. The second thing that I have here are some fundamental goals, and this is based on state statutes in town law, village law, general city law. This has to do with fundamentals of our Constitution of both the state and the federal government, of what right does a government have to plan, a local government or a state government. There's no time to go through all of the origins and transfers of power. However, the enabling legislation talks of four basic ideas. One is the public health, next is public safety, public morals, and general welfare. Health, some examples are water quality, air quality, and the third one, which I've learned more about in the last couple of years, is, I can't remember the name of the federal agency, but in the federal government, some agency in the federal government that deals with health believes that obesity is one of the major public health problems in the United States, that coronary problems, cancers, back problems, all kinds of problems, many kinds of problems, have a high correlation with obesity. Obesity has a high correlation of not getting exercise, and that often has to do with the design of communities in the suburban U.S. So trying to improve the public health in that regard.
That agency might be the Department of Health and Human Services.
Could be. I don't
Could be.
remember. I was given a very good, or I attended a very good presentation on that in Saratoga Springs last year by 3 individuals, and I never knew so much, and I don't know it anymore because I forgot most of the facts they told me. But anyway, the second category is public safety, fire safety, traffic safety, safety from flood hazards, and so on. The third one is an interesting one that a term we don't hear too much of since the 70s, but that the government has any business in morals. I grew up in an era where I often heard the phrase that you can't legislate morality. However, in case law, in having to do with planning and zoning going back to the 1920s, public morals was often cited as a reason to approve or deny or to uphold or overturn local decisions. The main example I could think of today is the governments regulate where and how adult businesses are conducted. The last category, general welfare, is very broad. It includes such things as, and I see it's misspelled, aesthetics. I'm not sure what that says. Aesthesis, I guess. But aesthetics, convenience,
It's actually
property
correct on the handout,
balance. Okay.
but incorrect on the
Economics and fiscal
Bill.
effects. The third item before we begin the actual topic is we made some presumptions regarding what the people of the town of Smithtown would want in a plan for the future. Overall, we think that most people will want the town to stay pretty much the way it is, to retain the overall character of the town, wooded, medium density, single family, open, suburban. Second is we believe that there should be a diversity of land uses to provide for the future needs and to minimize the risk to property values if circumstances change. In other words, in simple terms, don't put all your eggs in one basket. A third principle, or a third goal, is to be efficient and minimize fiscal costs. And then lastly, we get back to that sustainable again, where future generations should be able to enjoy the same quality of life that we have today. I put here the 1961 plan that the town has had, and it hasn't been updated since. And it's hard to see here, but I drew clouds around all of the things that didn't happen or that weren't followed. It might be a little bit hard to see, but that plan is cluttered with all kinds of things all kinds of things that aren't there today. You can see that 25A was going to be relocated across the Nissaquag River between the Country Club and Oakside Drive and into the village of Nissaquag, and right through the property of the former county executive John Klein and Smithtown supervisor, and out to Brookhaven by Gyrodyne. Obviously that never took place. They didn't know the mall was going to happen. Near Crooked Hill Road, they believed that industry was going to happen there, and today we know that there are about 10 big box retail stores, and so on and so forth. The overall concept of the plan is basically dividing the town into 6 communities or hamlets, each with their own central place, some form of a downtown, each having a sense of transition between one community and the next, and each has its own character. They're not 6 of the same thing. St. James and Hop Hog are not identical. The second category is that we've identified 87 neighborhoods using generally accepted planning principles, each bounded by some kind of a natural or artificial feature where people would not want to have their children cross. So whether it's bounded by the river or Long Island Sound, a railroad, or a major highway. Most normally should have a school, a neighborhood school of some form, and or a playground as a focal point. The low density ones should be near the water, the high density ones should be near the downtowns, and the medium density everywhere else. Part of the overall concept is that Smithtown would continue to have a green belt through the middle of town along the Nissaquag River that branches out along the shore and then back down the Sunken Meadow Parkway to the Saginaw Coast and to the Northern State Parkway. The organization of the plan is broken up into 3 parts. Sometimes they're called master plans. One's on land use, one's on transportation, and one on community facilities. Overall, with respect to land use, we'll start with that first. There should be a balance of land uses. The uses should be efficiently and safely located. Most planners believe that location is important. That incompatible uses should be buffered from each other. One thing that I forgot to put down here is planning going back to the 19-teens in the United States usually wanted to separate land uses. Starting in roughly the 1980s, the concept of mixed land use has come into vogue. And we actually planned for that, but it didn't mention in here. Mixed land use would be, here's a contrast. In 1950 or 60, the idea of having apartments or houses in a downtown area was considered bad. Today, in most of the United States, it's considered good.
When you talk about balancing land uses, do you have uses in mind you want to encourage and uses in mind you want to discourage?
Pretty much. I mean, it's not a matter of what we want, other than the fact to try to have, if you will, a natural equalization, as if there were no zoning. The town by adopting zoning, has on purpose or accidentally regulated the marketplace.
Right.
And if there were no land use controls, private decisions all the time would be making adjustments. And presumably, although not really, but presumably there would end up being a balance. Typically what happens in places that don't have zoning have the same kinds of problems of too much office space or not enough office space or whatever it might be. If you look at this graph over here, this depicts the proportions of the different land uses that we're recommending. Each color has two bar graphs. The one on the left, which is darker, is what the existing land use is, and then the one on the right is what the recommended land use is. Since the town is mostly developed, you can see that the changes are not very dramatic. So there's a little bit more residential. That's the first graph off to the left. Not much more retail, just about the same. About the same, maybe a little bit less industry. A little bit more parkland or open space. Very slightly more institutional. And then agricultural is the next line, I believe. It's so small it can't be seen practically. And then transportation would be about the same. And then the last one is that presumably there would be no vacant land left in 20 years. That may or may not turn out to be the case.
You're showing an increase in open space. Are you
Correct.
thinking in terms of condemnation or outright purchase of property?
Normally, this town, and I think most towns, tend not to want to do condemnation. The town's policy in the past has almost always been acquisition amicably. If a person doesn't wish to sell, the town typically hasn't pushed it. So I don't think there's any reason to change that in the future. I think some of it will result by cluster development and subdivisions. So that I'm not sure exactly whether it's half or less, but a significant portion would just be in the normal course of development. Instead of spreading the development out, it would be concentrated on part of the property, a property, so that the other part of the property remains open. Now, just focusing on residential land use, I think it's probably best to save time to not go through all of the items that I mentioned, but basically, I'll just hit on a couple. The density should be concentrated in the 6 hamlet centers. We're recommending that there be more residents for the young workforce. It's difficult for people getting out of college to find places to live on Long Island and Smithtown, as well as the other towns. This is a conceptual map showing where the different densities of residential land use would be. So you see these bullseyes showing the 6 communities of the town, and the darker colors are the highest densities being near the centers, and then radiating away from them, lower and lower densities. Except for those little blips that you see following a linear pattern, that's a recommendation for higher density as infill development in the vacant or underutilized properties on Middle Country Road and County Road 16. The white are the villages. This is just a picture of apartments. Could be condos. This is a breakdown where before we were looking at acreages. This is on units of dwellings. If this plan were adopted by the town board, and we're not saying that it will be, but if it were, you can see that there's not much change overall in the residential makeup of the town. You can see most of the growth is over at the right at multifamily residence, but if you look at it, it's not much different from what it is today. And when you look at the whole picture together, it's not that much different. As I think this board knows, there are a lot of people who say that Long Island needs more multifamily housing for younger people. A lot of people getting out of college over the past 10 years in the United States and Long Island do not seek home ownership the same way we did when we were young. Many of them don't even drive, which is, you know, hard to imagine Americans not wanting to drive. But a lot of them can be 22 years old and not own a car and not miss it. It's just hard to understand, at least for an old fogey like me. But supposedly, there are studies that say that. But it's as much as the need is there, multifamily is generally not wanted in residential, single-family residential areas. Textbooks often say that multifamily residence should be a transition between business and single-family home areas, but Smithtown's already built, and there's really no way to do that without ripping something down, and that typically is not appreciated. It's not wanted by Smithtown residents. So the question is where would they go? And, well, interestingly enough, the land use analysis shows that there is an overabundance of commercial land, so it would seem that to avoid even more commercial development being built and, in a sense, robbing Peter to pay Paul, that some of those sites might make sense for multifamily, whether it be near the mall, in the Middle Country Road corridor near where we are, or Jericho Turnpike, or something like that.
When we talk multifamily, we're not necessarily talking low income, though. We're just simply talking higher density.
No, actually, I thought about this morning. I would qualify, and I'm the highest paid person in my department. So we're really not that I'm the wealthiest person on Long Island, but I'm saying that the income is a lot higher than what most people think. Anyway, switching to business, the business land use, we recommend that business be concentrated into the existing zoned business locations. The two regional centers, the Smith Haven Mall area and Crooked Hill Road, the 6 community centers, which are the 3 older downtowns along the railroads, St. James, Smithtown, and Kings Park, and then the 3 southern centers, Commack, Hauppauge, and Nesconset. As you know, a couple of those are really sort of amorphous today. Nesconset is sort of stretched out. The plan recommends concentrating the use a little bit more between the Armory and Nichols Road, for example. This is a plan showing this. Again, I apologize. This shows up nicely on a computer screen. It's muddied, if you will, on the silver screen on the tripod. But it's pretty much the existing situation. It's basically important to say it's not an expansion of the existing situation. And by the same token, it's not a contraction really either. This is just a sample of designing the downtowns in a way that make them more walkable. The third land use category is industry. The overall concept is to concentrate industry into 4 areas. Obviously the Hauppauge Industrial Park, a very large, strong, and important industrial zone. The old Northport Road area, the Southern Boulevard, Montclair Avenue area, we're in it right now, and the Route 25 corridor. What it does mean is that in the original plan, some areas that were contemplated to be industry would need to be used for something else. The land use study indicated that the demand for industry is very low, especially if you're not next to the Long Island Expressway. The access for trucks seems to be the buzzword, or seems to be the most important thing for location. And if you're somewhere not near the expressway, realtors have a difficult time convincing people to locate warehouses or manufacturing. So Gyrodyne was zoned for industry in 1947 or so. That's an area that we're recommending be converted for uses related to Stony Brook University. We think that this is particularly important to Long Island's economy and to Smithtown's economy. Stony Brook University, Hofstra, Brookhaven National Lab, Cold Spring Harbor Lab, these are the Grummans of the future. These are the export industries of Long Island. Money comes from around the world to Long Island to these institutions. So it's our belief that strengthening the one closest to us, the one that now is partly within our township, which is Stony Brook University, is important for our economic base. We're not exactly sure what should be done with that property. However, we believe that its significance is important. One of the things we said is that there should be buffers between industry and residents, adequate buffers. And this is a conceptual plan showing the locations of industry. The southern part, the big area, is the Hauppauge Industrial Park. The one that's colored differently, the light color is light industry, the dark purple is heavy industry. That brownish color is basically recreation-related uses, and that's really the brownfield areas in the old Northport Road corridor, east of the park, east of the Sunken Meadow Parkway, and not including a little core of heavy industry where Kings Park Industries is, and a few others, west of the former town landfill and east of the MSF. The recreation, we recommend preserving as much as possible, which at this stage of the town's development is not a heck of a lot. In general, adding the open space along the Nissaquag River and its tributaries. Institutional land uses, the plan recommends keeping it as much as possible. As the town develops, as land values go up, it makes it difficult for institutions to stay. Institutions, most sociologists believe, are important for people in our country. Basically, people find that having a Knights of Columbus or some form of American Legion, VFW, those kinds of clubs are important to the lives of most people. People like to belong to them, apparently. As the land values go up, those kinds of uses get replaced. They get replaced by whether it's homes or business or industry. So the plan is to try to do what the town can, not to build them, but just to make space for those kinds of uses. Other land uses, we recommend preserving some agriculture for the towns for a lot of reasons, but we say carefully. Agriculture of the future is not the agriculture of the past. We may, when we think of agriculture, may think of green acres or lots of open farmland, but it's fair to say that in the future it will be largely greenhouses. There was also an application a couple of years ago for someone who wanted to supposedly put in agriculture, but coincidentally needed to mine hundreds of thousands of yards of sand and gravel to do it, they said. So I think the town doesn't want to, I presume town residents don't want to have agriculture and then have to pay for it by having, in essence, mining going on for many years to get there. Solar energy is something that probably should be encouraged, most likely in the existing brownfields. This is the end of the land use section. When you put all the previous sections together, the composite map looks like this. It's not meant to be taken as a detailed plan. It's just the concept of having the 6 centers with density radiating away, the green along the Nissaquag River, and so on. The second section is transportation. Overall, the plan recommends that basically no dramatic changes are really feasible. At this stage of the town's development, it's not realistic to expect a new highway, no new 25As, no new parkways. Second thing is probably to make it the transportation system more balanced and not so automobile dominated, but to allow for pedestrian use. Third is to make it more environmentally friendly. And lastly is to try to make it more efficient and more sustainable. In the highway system, there's basically a hierarchy. First is the limited access highways, the expressway, and the parkways. Second are primary arterials. First is the Smithtown bypass, which we recommend that it be made more like a bypass to try to divert traffic from Edgewood Avenue, 25A, Main Street, Jericho Turnpike, and Old Willets Path, to try to suck some of that traffic out to the bypass, because typically there are a lot of people on the roads that I just mentioned going from places east of the town to places west of the town. And if the bypass could take more of those vehicles, it would be good. And then secondary arterials, those are the town highways like Landing Avenue, Meadow Road, Browns Road, things like that. And then the collectors, as you know in your subdivision regulations, you deal with collectors infrequently. Most streets are minor residential streets. And then lastly are the minor residential streets. And when you put the plan together, this is the transportation plan that we're recommending. The green are ones that I had mentioned last meeting where I think, Paul, you had questioned what do we mean by rural roads. We're recommending that for enhancing the property values of the town and protecting its character, that some of the roads that appear to be somewhat rural remain that way or be restored to look a little bit more rural. And then the parkways are scenic. I think, okay, there's parts on that map that I'll get to next. Improvements, there is something called a road diet, which is basically the idea of thinning out roads to make them more economical to maintain. That sometimes dovetails with another technique called traffic calming. We recommend some more connector streets. A couple of them are actual construction. One is over here in the industrial area in Southern Boulevard to connect from Southern Boulevard to Lake Avenue, a road parallel to Middle Country Road. It's been started by Cider Lumber. The Damianos organization has proposed to the town board to extend it, and overall we think it's a good planning idea. It provides more access to the backs of properties, and that's better from a value standpoint, an employment standpoint, a use standpoint, a tax standpoint, a circulation standpoint. There must be negatives, but we haven't found them. Some things like roundabouts we recommend, mini traffic circles. To just go quickly through the other parts of the transportation, sidewalks are sometimes controversial. We recommend having plans for sidewalks, one for each community. Bicycling, trying to eliminate hazards, a little bit more on-street parking in the downtowns, some more municipal parking, updating the parking standards on private property. One of the things that, not under the town's control, but we would recommend the MTA do, is to look into eliminating some of the grade crossings in the town. Probably the worst, most congested one is by the fire department in Kings Park, but there are others. Buses, that's a county jurisdiction, but we're recommending that they look into providing a new bus route along Smithtown Boulevard from Smithtown through Lake Ronkonkoma. And in the world of truck delivery, we're recommending that there be loading zones off of Middle Country Road. There are many car dealers in town, and that's a good thing. However, the bad part is a lot of times they unload in the street, and that creates hazards and congestion.
Are you looking at the on-street parking increase being unmetered?
We didn't actually get into that, but I would think the answer is yes. If there's enough demand to warrant metering, the town could revisit that. But
Yeah, no. I'm not advocating that at
I
all. I'm
understand.
just finding more and more meters going up, and I find it more and more on Long Island.
I can't imagine that our downtowns are strong enough to warrant that. They first need to get enough parking to generate business. If everything takes off, then people can look into the idea of whether or not they should be metered.
One of our council people told me that our sidewalk to non-sidewalk areas are roughly 50-50. Do you have a ratio in mind if you're going to promote or increase sidewalks as to what that should be?
We didn't come up with a ratio. We did draft some plans that are obviously they're very tentative. They have to go out to the town board and to the public. We did look into each of the communities. I'm trying to remember. I think the total overall is pretty much the way it is today, except that it would be a recommendation to make it more rational. There are a lot of streets that have sidewalks and very little traffic, and there are a lot of streets with a lot of traffic and no sidewalks. And it would be nice to have the sidewalks where they're needed most, and to minimize the cost of replacing sidewalks, to try to keep that as small as possible. And yet, on the other hand, from a safety standpoint, the federal government highway experts say there's nothing you can do more to increase safety than add sidewalks. I'm sorry, community facilities. I decided that we won't go through all of these. There are about 15 different objectives, and I'll just hit on the first one, parks. The plan recommends basically the 3 state parks and 1 DEC area that exist, probably Sunken Meadow being enlarged somewhat. The 3 state parkways, no new ones, no fewer. The 5 county parks plus the county greenbelt, and roughly 50 town parks, including the beaches, the mooring areas, the launches, all kinds of things.
What percentage of the town is parkland now?
About 16 to 17%. If all of the vacant land became parkland and none of it were developed, it would go up to about 20%. So we're not recommending that. Just from a sense of scale, it's not like 50% of the town would be parkland, or even a third, or even a quarter.
How does that stack up in comparison to other towns?
Smithtown has, in Suffolk County, somewhat less than the average overall right now.
Based on Babylon, Huntington, the West End towns?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There are other towns and suburbs in the United States that are newer than we are. They're often about a quarter to a third open space. The thinking, our town's planning really started in the late 40s. And the thinking at that time was less ambitious, I guess, than you might say, than in the 1970s and 80s, where if you go to, say, Freehold, New Jersey or something like that, it's very different.
Well, we were farmland then, so.
But so were they. It's just that they started later, and they learned from older suburbs like ours. And this is the community facilities concept plan. Again, way too much stuff to go over. This is a concept plan done for a not-for-profit group for a park, for basically Nissaquag River State Park. This hasn't been adopted, but it just shows the kinds of things that could be done with parks. It's hard to read, but it calls for things like amphitheaters and arboretums and horseback riding and so on and so forth. This is a concept plan that if one wanted to create some form of a village green near the Nissaquag River and link the town park and county parks, of creating something like Heckscher Park in Huntington, where they, sail model boats and feed ducks and have promenades and so forth. Something like a gateway into the business district. It could look something like this. This is not an actual proposal.
How would you fund that?
There are different ways, whether it be bonded or part of the operating budget, or typically people try to get grants for these things.
Right.
One of the things that I would say about parks is that they usually pay for themselves in the long run because they increase property values.
Absolutely.
And increasing property values results in increased taxes. Not always.
Not always.
Not always.
If everything goes up 20%, it doesn't necessarily mean your budgets have gone up 20%, so
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean your collections go up 20%, your rate floats.
Right. Absolutely. Then we believe that Smithtown is really composed of 6 communities, that the town, while it's the smallest of the western towns, most people, when you say, where are you from, if they see someone else in California or Florida, where are you from, they typically won't say, I'm from the town of Huntington or I'm from the town of Smithtown. They'll say, I'm from Greenlawn or I'm from St. James. So we broke the town up into the 6 communities, and we did one of these per community, and it's basically the overall plan with a focus on each of the 6 communities. So this one happens to be alphabetically. This is the first. This is Carmack. Okay, in summary, I would really like to stress this is only a draft. This will not go anywhere unless the town board wants it to. And if they did want it to, I'm sure they would want to get public opinion before adopting it. The second thing I think that's important is we tried to make it so that all the parts fit together. Changing some parts, like a jigsaw puzzle, has effects on other parts. The third thing is even though we came up with this, there's more than one way to design a plan. There's more than one floor plan for a house. People could have the same goals and have different designs. This is just one. And then lastly, if this is to go ahead, the planners, we really need to get public opinion regarding the goals. You know, what are their goals? What is the public goals? And then what alternatives did we come up with or that they may prefer? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last item on the agenda.
Yes.
Then we would need a motion to adjourn the
Motion
meeting,
to adjourn,
please.
Mr. Chairman?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? We're adjourned.